Self-awareness is a starting point for many areas of personal and professional growth. But most people don't know what it is or how to develop it. So join me, Kevin Dugan, a not-so-sikat emotional intelligence practitioner and facilitator, as I have short conversations with different people on how self-awareness relates to our lives and how we can grow it. Tonight, we're joined by a couple of people, not just a couple of people, three people I know. Some of them I've worked with, some of them I know personally. Um, and they're all from either millennials or Gen Zs. And we're going to try to define for our own selves tonight what self-awareness is and how it has helped us. Joining me tonight is Sabine Chongbian. She's a psych graduate from Ateneo. Say hello, Sabine.
Hi.
And then we have Andy, who's also he's Sabine's friend, and she's also from Ateneo. Say hello, Andy.
Hi, hello.
And then finally, we have Brent K. So Brent is from LaSalle. He's currently a Scrum Master at Home Credit. Brent?
Hey there. Pleasure to be here.
Right. So thank you guys for joining this, for being open to this. And I'm very glad that we're all here having this conversation. Again, the point of these podcasts is to help people understand what self-awareness is and eventually also help people develop it. Right. So I'll start off with trying to define what self-awareness is. So for you guys, what is it? And maybe how has it helped you? Who would
Wow,
like to
that's quite a really broad definition to ask, Kevin. At least for me, I would say that self-awareness has a lot to do with understanding how you think on thinking how you think. That's one way to really refine how your understanding of yourself, your understanding towards others, and your understanding in relation to the environment that you're in. That's for me.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'd say it's about constantly getting to know myself as if like you're getting to know a friend. I feel like my process of self-awareness is always asking myself questions about how I feel or catching myself during moments thinking about, oh, why did I react that way or why did I feel this way towards that? So I think it's really all about learning what your values are. And yeah, I think it's a very helpful process for self-growth.
Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, I like what you said about it's like getting to know a friend, because one of the ways that I've been trying to think about self-awareness, like my personal definition of it is something like understanding yourself through complete gentle honesty. And I think because sometimes when you reflect on yourself and who you are, sometimes it gets too much into self-consciousness. Maybe you're a little hard on yourself for your faults. And I also like what you said about knowing your values, because I think that's a really important aspect of developing self-awareness, knowing what it is that's important to you and what it is that you want in life. Like, how do you want to experience your life? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Correct.
Sabine. Sabine, you mentioned something about gentle honesty.
Yeah.
Right. Can you share a little bit more about how you define gentle honesty and how it relates to being more
Self-awareness.
aware? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in my own experience, right, I really try to not hide things from myself. If there are aspects of myself which I think aren't the best at the moment or need improvement, or maybe even times in my life where I haven't been the kindest person I could have been, I kind of stop to think about those times, like not hide them, because I know sometimes we like to avoid when we're not the person that we want to be. But I think it's good to be really honest with yourself and to think about those things, but also not to beat yourself up about it. You know, not blame yourself too much. And maybe if you you were doing things in the past that aren't exactly things that are in line with the person that you want to be, you know, you learn to forgive yourself for all of those times. You have to be kind of gentle about it. You have to be willing to accept that that was who you were then, but you're a work in progress.
Right. Now, that's honestly, that's kind of easy to say
Right.
when you're in college, when you're in that idealistic part of life.
Right.
But then you go into the corporate world, um, and it gets harder to do that, right? And I think it's also great that your generation is more aware of this. My generation, so I came out of college around 2000, so we're like the 90s kids. We're I forgot what's our generation and Gen X. Anyway, um, so we grew up with a different outlook that we had to hide things. The concepts of vulnerability, the concepts of authenticity, were still not really being embraced at that time. Now, I want to ask this question of Brent because Brent is kind of in between those generations, these generations. And um, what was it like for you? What do you think about gentle honesty, and is it something that you could have used in your first jobs, or how is it going to be helping now with what you're doing?
Oh, yes. I believe this is a really important conversation to have because a lot of times we were taught, you know, I came from a family where it's a lot more what is instilled to us is this sense of sequential progress. You know, when you finish studying, you need to have a job, and when you have a job, you're gonna
Mhm.
have all this, you know, earn your salary, get your paycheck, and move forward. And then whatever is the linear progress that we have, this narrative that we often are being thought about, like, and you know, get married, have a family, and eventually all of these things. So things that are uh, more exploratory may not be as entertaining to hear, right? So you know,
Right.
we tend to see millennials and Gen Zs assuming that we put ourselves in some artificial categories, right? We
Right.
were perceived to be people who are explorers. We are actually embracing the privilege of having the technology to go outside to go outside from where we are and exploring the world in a different way, right? We are able to have access to, let's say, to different parts of Asia in a cheap in a rather budgeted cost. So it's making us have a wider, broad view of the world, and I think this is really important for us because we tend to, when we grow older, we tend to want to put security at the forefront, right? I want to now build up this
Control.
identity of who we are, right?
Right.
But that is like putting this wall around you in order to secure yourselves from the uncertainty and the constant flux of uncertainty and chaos that's out there. And nature is tends to be a lot more chaotic than what you perceive it to be ordered, isn't it? And you
Right.
know,
Yep.
being self-aware has a lot to do with, you know, from what Sabine mentioned about gentle honesty. You know, we always talk about what external, but let's try to see that there's really no external without the internal, how the internal condition is played out, right? So when you are in a mindset of us versus them, or me against the world, you have an adversarial relationship with all people around you. You are competing, you are one-upping one another, right? There's this
Right.
flex, this vanity that you want to impress people. Like, here I am, untarnished, with reputation, and I am called Brent D what, right? And so we put a very regimented or rigid label to ourselves of how we want to be perceived by the world. But that's not the case. We're as equally as flux in form, or call it formless, right, as nature. And maybe this is me trying to put myself in the position, at least from where I am, an understanding of, a rather kind understanding of nature. And that reflects to how I would understand myself, because my story was a bit difficult, before, when I came into the corporate workplace and I see like people just wanting to earn the paycheck and go out of the get out of the workplace. That feeling like, I'm just here to get the money and that's it. And
Yep.
it's very difficult for me, because I said, what's the purpose? And this reminds me of Viktor Frankl's, man search for meaning. Like, what purpose do you serve when you go to the workplace? How can you contribute despite adversities, right? Call it adversities in the workplace. And, we tend to use these terms, work-life balance. What is really work-life balance? Why do you put this sense of duality between work and life, and looking at work as something you dread for? Isn't it? And maybe Andy and Sabine would want to explore that option, right?
Right. So, okay. So we're looking at these things from looking at self-awareness from different perspectives, from the perspective of life itself and chaos, the perspective of internal reflection,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and I think we're able to now define it a little generally what it is. Um, so for you guys, what do you think are the challenges to building awareness?
I think
Go ahead,
a
Andy.
big I think a big challenge, like for us, for our generation now, is definitely social media. Like, I mean, it has
Mhm.
both its pros and cons. Like, for example, like with what you guys were discussing earlier, I feel like it was thanks to social media that I became more aware about the world and different ways of thinking. And that's why, like, now at this age, like, I know more about self-awareness, whereas like maybe my parents, or at when my parents were at my age, like they didn't really know much about these things yet because it wasn't as discussed before. But like I feel like a challenge with social media is that you tend to get lost in the scrolling, and you're just constantly taking up all of this information without really fully processing it mindfully.
Right.
I really realized that during this pandemic, because we were just stuck at home. All I could do was social media, go online, and I started realizing more how much it was really shaping my thoughts. Whereas before, I thought it just wasn't that much because I just scroll in between school, like classes, or when going out. But now I see like it really poses a challenge for self-awareness because you tend to get lost in the scrolling. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. But
And
thank you,
and this
Andy.
is a
What
very
do you guys
interesting
think? Yeah.
case, Kevin, because what Andy mentioned has a lot to do with, they call it the doom scrolling, right? And doom scrolling has more with you always tend to be attracted with the scary stuff, right? Like what's happening with
Yeah.
COVID. I'm getting anxious
Right.
about it. And
Our
then
negativity bias.
right. and
Mm-hmm.
and a lot, people are looking at this from an apocalyptic lens. This is the end of the world. We're gonna get judged by this virus. We're gonna get smited. We're gonna get smitten by it. And I see this. I mean, this is where information starts to spread. People are trying to grasp this sense of certainty with the chaos of nature, right?
Right.
And people just want to make sense of the situation, despite the information that is being offered to them may not be correct. And we see all this conspiracy theory going on. And people start to see that
Yeah.
your critical thinking has become a luxury that most only a few could afford, right? But
Well, I hope not. I hope not. But yes, go ahead. Sorry.
and critical thinking doesn't mean that some people don't have it, some people do. It's more like
Mm.
because we tend to be pressured or be pressed by our own biases, and we don't really see how the others see this way, right?
Right.
And we see this right now in the United States. We have this political divide, and people are just like don't get why the other would think that way, right? We have this issues going on, and yet it's getting worse. Or if I don't really think that it's getting worse. It's just it's unearthing, like what Andy said. Everything starts to be right in front of you through the screen, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's not just the United States that's having that this divide, but here too. I think there's also a bit of a divide here as well.
Yeah.
Um, so so these okay. So going back to thanks Brent for what you said. Now going back to this, so there's one of the challenges is social media. Brent also mentioned that another challenge is our biases, right? Our negative bias. So for those who are listening, in psychology, there's what's called a negative bias. So our brains are is really kind of geared towards negativity. And speaking about psychology, so Sabine is also a psychology graduate. Um, and so Sabine, what for you are the challenges to building self-awareness?
I think one of the things I mentioned earlier when we were defining self-awareness was that it really helps you understand what you value and what is important to you in life. And something that I've learned over the hard way over the past few years is that, and one of the challenges in building self-awareness is when you're trying to figure out what you value, it's not always something that you can easily command to your mind. Like
Yeah.
I remember when I was in like the early days of college, one of my philosophy teachers asked me, what is your big question right now? And this must have been in 2018, 2017. And I remember thinking, it's what do I value? And it took so long. And I think until now, I still haven't fully answered that question, because I realized that sometimes the questions that you ask to develop your self-awareness aren't things that you can just make happen or answer right away. Sometimes, especially like with this question, I feel like I had to experience certain events in my life for it to make me realize, okay, maybe this is an idea of what I value. Maybe I'm leaning more towards this area. I feel like your experiences in life help shape a lot of how you become aware of yourself, or how much you end up knowing about yourself or understanding.
Right.
Like it's like a bit of a back and forth. Yeah.
So the challenge you're mentioning here is going through these experiences. And I think it's also important that as we go through these experiences, we take the time to reflect. A reflection doesn't have to be 3 hours long or over a week long. Reflection can be just half a second
And
as we go
and
through
this is
these
good
experiences.
because experience is a good teacher. And a good teacher will always be there. The question would be, how introspective are you given the experience that was offered to you?
Right. So how do we, thanks for bringing that up, Brent. So we defined self-awareness. We asked how it has helped us. We're asking about how it has challenged us. So how do we, what are the concrete steps that you've taken um, to develop self-awareness? So Brent, you're talking about introspection. So how do we start with introspection? What does it look like really? Because we keep talking about it, but what are the steps
And
towards doing that?
I like to make a distinction of how people would introspect, because there are people that contemplate. I would use that synonymously, is that some people reflect, introspect, or contemplate in a way that wants to warn us that they're right. And this is where you start to create scenarios that when you have a conflict with one person, and then you said that I'm contemplating. And then when you start contemplating, you are somewhat oppressed by your own biases, because you're trying to confirm that you're right in that situation. For me, that's not exactly contemplation. What I'm trying to do is try to generate insights coming from a conflict, right? And that means that, for instance, I end the work week or even the workday, what I do is that not only do I try to understand, like, okay, what did I do right? What am I missing? And
Mm-hmm.
how am I relating to this person that I'm interacting with? How am I contributing to the discussion? And all of these things. I mean, we could talk about objective facts, like what we talked about, what situation we are in. But then when you start to put yourself in a, you put your ego aside, and then you're trying to situationalize, to try to understand how the other person is contributing to the discussion, and then you're trying to introspect around it. That's something I would say a lot more useful. Because if you're just confirming that what you say and what you do is the right thing, and you call that introspection, then maybe that's not.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, Brent. Sabine, what do you think?
Exercises that, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
how
Yeah,
like
go
how
ahead.
to build self-awareness.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. What
I
has helped
think
you build?
something that has helped me build self-awareness that hasn't kind of skewed it into a negative self-consciousness is reflecting on how my mind is thinking about things. So sometimes when a thought pops into my head, and I actually learned this from somebody else, a therapist that I talked to, she said, if a thought pops into your head that may be making you feel anxious or maybe making you feel not the best at the moment, you kind of ask yourself, is this a useful thought for right now?
Right.
Is thinking this way or even having this perspective going to benefit you? Is it going to help you grow? Is it going to help you get over a problem in the moment? So I think asking yourself questions about your own thinking, like how often a day do I think about everything I don't have rather than everything that I've been blessed with
Mhm.
at the moment? I think those are things that thinking about those, like actively asking yourself these questions and trying to answer them, helps you reflect about where your mind's
Right.
at in a day. And
That's
your
nice.
perspective shapes your experience of the day. Yeah.
Right. Very nice. Thank you. And Andy,
Yeah.
what has helped you?
For me, actually, like I think I build self-awareness through watching movies. Because like
Mhm.
a big challenge of mine is definitely being more
Oh,
gentle with myself.
wait, wait.
Because like oh yeah.
Let me interrupt you. Let me share this with the audience. So Andy is a budding filmmaker.
Oh.
So
I hope.
so we're hoping that she gets into film, and so just to give everybody context as why you're saying this. Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks. So yeah, like because a challenge I have is definitely that gentle honesty. Because sometimes, I still catch myself beating myself up over feeling sad or feeling anxious about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized watching movies really helped me because when I get to watch a movie that I really relate to, like especially if I relate to the character, I tend to reflect on that. Like, why did I relate to them? What did I see myself in them? And through the movie, I get to learn more about myself too, like why I felt that way towards the movie. Yeah.
Could you give a specific example? I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to.
There was this movie. It was released, I think, 2017 or 2018. It's called Lady Bird. Have any of you guys watched it?
Yes.
No.
Oh well. Anyway,
Is it about the
the
president something?
oh no,
No.
it's about
Okay.
it's a coming of age movie. It's starring
Okay.
Saoirse Ronan, and it's about like her high school life. She's in an all girls Catholic school, and I came from an all girls Catholic school too. And yeah, like I just really saw a lot of my own high school experiences reflected in that movie. And being able to watch this movie when I was like, I think I was a freshman in college. So, like I just ended high school recently. It helped me look back on everything I went through in high school. And it kind of,
Right.
yeah, it really helped me, I guess, get to know myself better too. And it it showed me how much I've grown since then, like my high
Mm.
school self versus my college self. So yeah, it like prompted me to reflect more about it.
And I think what's cool about that is sometimes when you're thinking about yourself, it's hard to like step out of your own head.
Yeah,
But if you're
yeah,
seeing it on a screen or like it's happening to someone else, you can relate to it, but it's still happening to someone else. So it allows you to kind of have like an outside perspective.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and I feel like I'm less judgmental about other people compared to myself. Like that's really a challenge I'm still trying to overcome.
This inner
So
critic of yours, isn't it, Andy?
exactly, yeah. So movies really help process a lot of my feelings and thoughts.
I'm trying to recall a movie, Andy, which has helped me become more aware of my own thoughts. I think one of the better ones was Gandhi. That very long 3 hour long movie of Gandhi.
Oh, I haven't seen that
Yeah. Oh, it's long, but it is helpful. Actually, I read his autobiography before I watched it, and I guess one of the things that has helped me with my own self awareness is understanding my own compassion. So comparing what Gandhi had gone through, all that persecution, and then how he's able to build compassion, right, for everybody. So he was building compassion for Hindus, for Muslims, um, and so it helped me reflect on my own compassion and my own anger towards other people before. So um, I used to build up a lot of anger in my own self, right?
Yeah.
And reflecting, watching these things, reading about people who have built compassion has helped me understand. Okay, um, I think I do have compassion, but I also do have this anger that I should be working on and managing. So thanks. Yeah. Now I'm reminded of the things that have helped me, movies that have helped me reflect on my own self awareness.
That's nice. I'm gonna add that to my list.
Yeah. If you like to read, I would suggest to do the autobiography first.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. It's heavy. It's very long, but it's a good one. It's really good. Right.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah,
thank
I'll
you.
check it
Thank
out.
you. Yeah, go ahead. Please do. Let me know what you think.
Sure.
All right. So the past few minutes we've covered defining what self-awareness is. We've covered what are the challenges to building awareness, how it has helped us, um, and we've shared some exercises that we all do to build our own self-awareness. Before we end the podcast, do you guys have anything else that you'd like to share or share with the audience about self-awareness or building self-awareness?
One thing I would like to take away here, or even because I was trying to reflect in real time, it's this you know, I tend to have, so-called the imposter syndrome. You always felt that, the world is looking at you in the window of, you need to compete, you need to be better. And that brings a lot of like thoughts of anxiety, feelings of anxiety that you cannot tame very well, and that evolves into angst. So it's a lot, like what Andy said, it's a lot more of like you're beating yourself up. And then now that we want to use this, courage. We want to allow, I think this is coming from one of the TED Talks I watched. It's more of like allowing your fear to walk, and that's courage.
I like that.
And for me, the reason why we are stuck is that we allow this fear to overwhelm us, and that's why we feel paralyzed. And all these things, you always have this narrative of people chasing you down the road. So if you could overcome that stuckness, or you overcome this feeling of, being watched, being not good enough, or you felt that you're gonna fail, you end up fulfilling that prophecy that you always think about it. So
Right.
Yeah.
change that
Mm.
narrative, because what you believe in, what you think that you are will become who you are eventually.
Right.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
manifesting
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
our
Self-fulfilling for prophecy.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
How about Andy and Sabine? Anything you'd like to
Mm.
share?
On that note, like with the manifesting and all, like I mentioned social media earlier, right? So I guess
Mm-hmm.
something I learned during this time was to kind of curate my social media feed, because like I don't think I could ever get rid of social media. I think of course there's still a lot of benefits to it, but
Yep.
definitely like curating your feed a bit more to stuff that you'd want to see
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really helps. And definitely like I've been creating my feed to like follow more self-growth accounts like on Instagram, just to learn more constantly, or like have reminders about self-reflection. And yeah, I guess like to avoid that doom scrolling, again, I try to use my time more with like movies or
Mm-hmm.
books
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
hobbies. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Andy and Sabine.
well, also connected to both manifesting and like all of these external things that kind of shape how you start thinking. One thing that I actually started to do during the pandemic that has helped a lot kind of shape my mindset for the day is just taking like a minute or two, sometimes 20 minutes in the morning to think about what's important to me and let that kind of drive me for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes like you actually take the time to like meditate on it or pray on it, but it's also the kind of thing that you can think about when you're like taking a shower in the morning, which really sets the tone for the whole day to manifest what it is you value in that day.
I like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's just, yeah, I like that too. More for me, it's more of like, what am I to show for today?
Yeah.
Right. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for all of the insights on self-awareness. Thank you for defining it. Thank you everyone for the exercises you shared and the practices that you shared. Um, so for those of you in the audience or listening, if you'd like to build your own self-awareness, just let us know. Send us a message through Acuerdo, and we may be able to help you out. And on that note, thank you everybody for what you shared. And hopefully I can get you guys to join in a future session, talk more about these things. All right.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
you
great.
too. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks
You're
for reaching
welcome.
out.
All right. You're welcome. Bye. Thanks for listening. We hope that you're able to take something away from this podcast that will help you on your self-awareness journey. If you would like to learn how to further develop your self-awareness, send us an email at acuerdo.inquiry@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at Acuerdo Learning.